Somewhere where the light meets the lens, where the frame flatters the location, and the camera moves just right, an incredible image is born. These are the top 10 most beautiful movies of all time. Let's get right into it. Starting us off at number 10, it's Russian Ark. The 96-minute single uncut Steadicam shot through the Russian Hermitage Museum. Sure, it might sound like a gimmick at first, but the footage speaks for itself. A jaw-dropping location and brilliantly costumed characters filled the screen, lit with remarkable mood and variation by cinematographer Tilman Buettner, all coming together in an unbroken series of marvelously composed portraits. Of course, we considered a ton of other gorgeous films for this spot, because if we're talking Russia, we can't not mention Andrei Tarkovsky, especially his eerie, mixed film stock beauty from Stalker. And if we look around a little further in Europe, we love Kieślowski's Three Colors trilogy, Ingmar Bergman's, well, everything, and definitely Jean-Pierre Jeunet's Amélie. But they can't quite outdo the Russian Ark, which is why it kicks off our list. Now, we can't fill up a whole list of gorgeous movies without a throwback or two to the OG of cinema, black and white. So for our next pick, we're looking at some of cinema's modern directors who decided to throw out the colors and get back to their roots with grayscale. And for that, we can't think of a better film than Manhattan, Woody Allen's 1979 love letter to New York City.
Chapter 1. He adored New York City. He idolized it all out of proportion. He romanticized it all out of proportion. Better.
And that's not to say there weren't other films that just missed our list. It was hard not to give a spot to Raging Bull or Schindler's List, but this black and white take on New York is timeless, thanks to cinematographer Gordon Willis, who decided to pair ultra-wide screen with black and white at Allen's suggestion because that's how he remembered New York as a kid. Woody actually begged for it not to be released. Apparently, this was his least favorite film he'd ever made, but to our eye, it's decadent, timeless, and full to the brim with stark imagery, which is why it made our list. Of course, when it comes to beautiful black and white, we can't discount the classics, the works of master cinematographers at home in their medium. And for that, we had a lot of choices. We've already mentioned Bergman's, but there's The Night of the Hunter, M and Metropolis, Rules of the Game, 8.5, especially The Third Man. But even The Third Man doesn't quite live up to Orson Welles' other masterpiece and our number 8 pick, Citizen Kane.
Here's a man that could have been president, who was as loved and hated and as talked about as any man in our time. But when he comes to die, he's got something on his mind called Rosebud.
Citizen Kane is basically an entire film education in a 2-hour package. The multiple levels of staging and deep focus techniques seemed revolutionary. But the craziest part is that this was Orson Welles' first film ever as a director. He had no idea what he was doing. He learned everything he knew from watching classics and essentially just borrowed every technique that grabbed his eye from every film he saw. But the result was a tapestry woven of the best of cinema from around the world, free from the limitations of experience, and one of the most beautiful films to boot. Next up at number 7, we're turning our eyes to space. The masters of cinema have always tended to do something extra special when it comes to their depiction of heavenly bodies. And while Chivo gave us a breathtaking look at Earth and gravity, and Alvin Kugler captured the beauty of the sun in Sunshine, there's nothing in the universe quite like 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Now, some of you might immediately think of the admittedly impressive hypnotic neon Stargate sequence when we talk about 2001's visuals, but there's hardly a single frame that isn't intricately designed, immaculately composed, and stunningly lit. With a tendency towards central framing and striking symmetrical compositions, Stanley Kubrick and Jeffrey Unsworth are at their visual best, whether composing celestial ballets or staging spacewalks. However, if we're talking about Kubrick, we have to throw in a brief honorable mention for Barry Lyndon. Just look at it. Every single frame is a Renaissance painting. Of course, singling out directors when it comes to gorgeous imagery is a bit like singling out jockeys at the Kentucky Derby. Sure, they're important, but they're not the ones running the race. So if we're talking cinematographers, we think Vittorio Storaro is one to know. This guy's rap sheet could make up this whole list. He shot Apocalypse Now, Last Tango in Paris, The Last Emperor, and our number 6, The Conformist.
L'ufficio del capo gabinetto.
Directed by Bernardo Bertolucci, The Conformist conjures up a stunning palette of fascism, from the hard illumination that bars the characters behind beams of light to the compositions that highlight Marcello's tragic inability to conform. It's artfully conceived, meticulously crafted, and brutally beautiful, and definitely worth checking out. Next up, we want to honor the extraordinary imagery of imagination. And we love looking at Big Fish and What Dreams May Come for painting us a picture of a mythical story and telling us the story of a living painting, respectively. But for our pick, number 5 can be none other than Tarsem Singh's The Fall.
I will search the four corners of this earth, find Governor Odious, and joyously kill him.
Half 1930s hospital, half little girl's imagination, plus a totally random but still really pretty slow-motion black and white title sequence, The Fall is basically the best ever filmic excuse to just show off. Shot over 4 years in the most awe-inspiring parts of 28 countries, cinematographer Colin Watkinson filled the screen with so many gorgeous tableaus that there are literally half-second throwaway shots that are more beautiful than the entire oeuvres of lesser DPs. Now, we've spent plenty of this list looking at the handsome cinematography of Americans and Europeans, but we've yet to turn our lens to the Asiatic region. We've circled back to it time and again for fight scenes, wardrobes, and now cinematography. And if I were a betting voiceover man, I'd bet it was one of the writer's favorite films. But for our number 4, it's hard to deny the visual virtuoso of Hero.
好快的剑。
Sure, we could have picked Kurosawa's Ran, or Ron Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love, or Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters. And we definitely could have gone with Yimou Chang's other works like House of Flying Daggers, or Curse of the Golden Flower, which is the only film that didn't make the cut for being too visually stimulating. But there's nothing as poetic in its simplicity and steadfast in its commitment to a visual style as Hero. Lensed by Christopher Doyle, the film tells one story from 3 perspectives, an homage to Rashomon, with each perspective a different color. And what did the colors mean? Well, they were mostly pretty arbitrary. Red was Zhang's number 1 pick, blue and white to match the lake and desert, and black to match the temple. By the time they got to the final flashback, green was just about the only color left. It might not be deep, but it sure was pretty. For our number 3, we want to honor some of the larger-than-life mid-century epics that brought impressive vistas to the widescreen. And that could have been the stunning saturation of Technicolor classics like Ben-Hur, The Searchers, or The Wizard of Oz. Hell, if you've got an extra moment for Technicolor, check out the radical colors of Suspiria, one of the last films to be processed in it. However, our number 3 goes to an absolute masterpiece of filmmaking, shot instead on Super Panavision 70, a superlative cinematic look at the desert and timeless pinnacle of film art, Lawrence of Arabia. Directed by David Lean and shot by Freddie Young, the imagery here is absolutely breathtaking. The widescreen format perfectly captures the vast expanse of the empty desert. Freddie's colors provide an almost visceral heat, and the 70mm format provides a fittingly larger-than-life palette for our hero. Most famously, Freddie Young, tasked with capturing a mirage on film, acquired a whopping 430mm lens and sent the actor far into the distance to capture this iconic shot. Now, if there's a director known for the lyrical beauty of his work, it has to be Terrence Malick. And if we're ranking top 5 Malick movies based on aesthetics, prettiest to even prettierest, our eyes say New World, then Badlands, Days of Heaven, Thin Red Line, and our number 2 pick, The Tree of Life.
The nuns taught us there are 2 ways through life. The way of nature and the way of grace.
Shot by Emmanuel Lubezki, the set of Tree of Life was controlled chaos. They only ever shot in natural light, would ditch a scene in the middle when they were distracted by fireflies, and focused more on finding emotions than covering scenes. They had the same rooms built in 3 different houses facing different directions so that they could pick their favorite light. And then there's the supernova. Instead of turning to a computer, Malick hired Douglas Trumbull, the mastermind behind 2001's Stargate, to experiment with dye and paint and milk and chemicals and fluorescent ink and all other sorts of witchcraft in order to create the magnificently surreal images seen on screen. If our number 2 made light on its narrative in favor of stirring imagery, our number 1 does away with it completely. A visual tone poem. No words, no dialogue, no plot. Our most beautiful pick is called Samsara. Like its prequels, Baraka and Kronos, and their spiritual ancestors from the Katsi trilogy, Samsara is perhaps the purest of cinema. It is beyond language. It says its piece by virtue of emotional, thematic, and aesthetic association, but it's also completely gorgeous. Shot on 70mm film in almost 100 locations in 25 countries over 5 years. The images are majestic, overwhelming, unbelievable. There isn't a single frame you couldn't hang on your wall and marvel at for years. It's a moving museum, a guided meditation, and a visual revelation, which is why it's our pick for most beautiful film of all time. But we f***ing love movies. We can never just stop at 10, and if you've noticed our top 10 lists look more like thinly veiled top 50s and we're terrible at making up our minds, then you're onto us, and we would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids and your nosy dog, too. So, as a special treat, and because there are so many beautiful movies and it pains us to leave some out, here's a mini montage of extra gorgeous movies for your enjoyment and our clear consciences. So, what do you think? Did we leave out one of your favorite pretty films? Do you disagree with one of our picks? Do you have any ideas for some more top 10s? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe for more Cinefix movie lists.